Yes, technology is great when it works. Right? Right? Buy some other mic cables.
Yeah. Wi-Fi, yeah. It should be upstairs. Yeah, I'll get that for you in a second. Let me see if there's a copy down here. Yeah, I'm gonna run upstairs and grab the info for you. Are you good? Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I was racing. So you're all set? You good? Yeah, let me test this. Okay. Let me test this on one. Where's your buddy at? Oh, he's at home. He's at the baby. Oh, nice. Oh, they can hear us. They can hear us. Let me make sure. Let me hear it. Oh, oh, okay. Testing.
All right. Now, good morning. This meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority will come to order. We were in closed session. There is no report from the closed session. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards. Here. Vice Chair Hartnett.
Here.
Mr. Umberg.
Here.
Mr. Rossi. Ms. Shank. Here. Ms. Perez Estelano. Here. Mr. Henning. Mr. Frank.
Here.
Chairman Richard.
Here. I will ask, let me just note that Mr. Henning is not here today because he is attending a funeral of the mother of a state official. Ms. Perez Estelano, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Okay, we will begin with public comment, and we have no elected officials who've submitted requests today, so we'll just take the public comments in the order in which the requests were received. We'll start with Mr. Brad Johns, and he'll be followed by Robert Allen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Johns.
I just want to say that...
Hold on one second, sir. You can take it out and hold it if you need to, Brad.
Okay. I just want to say thank you for all your efforts. And to that end, I have found some little mementos.
Okay, hold. Mr. Johns, I appreciate the mementos. You do know that we have restrictions under the gift laws. Why don't you stand back at the microphone so that...
And I would like you to give, Mr. Richards, I would like you to give this one to the governor himself. This is made of iron. It's got a gold car on it. And since the project is built to last, iron lasts. And I thought this would be a fitting thing for the governor himself. So I would like you to please present this to the governor for me, if you would, please.
All right. Mr. Johns, for reasons that I hope you'll understand, I'm not going to commit to doing that at this moment, but I think these are very nice, and they may end up in the State Historical Museum, but we'll deal with them appropriately. I understand.
Well, I understand there was a robbery down at the train museum, and these aren't those.
Thank you for clarifying that, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johns. Robert Allen, and he will be followed by Mr. Frank Oliver. Mr. Allen, good morning.
The Ides of March are about here. I'd like to tell you about an incident that happened in the Ides of March 15 years ago this week. The Illinois Central Railroad has a track from New York, from Chicago to New Orleans. Amtrak had a train, the city of New Orleans, which was derailed at a crossing. Track speed was authorized at 79 miles an hour. The train hit a truck loaded with steel. 2 locomotives were derailed. 11 of 14 cars were derailed. 11 passengers were killed, and 122 passengers were injured. I plead with you, don't put high-speed rail, which is even faster than 79 miles an hour. Don't put high-speed rail, have grade crossings on that. It's really deadly, and it's so possible to go up the east side of the go up toward Oakland. To get from Oakland across the bay to San Francisco, it's a 6 to 10 minute ride on BART. Trains run every 4 minutes. I urge you to to defer indefinitely the blended rail proposal from San Jose to San Francisco. For the time being, terminate high-speed rail coming from Merced at San Jose. People can have a cross-platform transfer to the Caltrain or the Capital Corridor. And you can't have much more speed than Caltrain operates anyway. There's too big a price to pay to have just to give people one seat from San Francisco down south. We need to have safety above all. Please defer that portion. I have given you a copy of proposed phasing, the first phase being after iOS, the first phase north of Merced being from Merced to San Jose, the second phase being from Merced to Sacramento, and then the third phase from from San Jose up to Oakland, where BART crosses overhead and have a station there, a joint station. And then the fourth one would be to go on to Sacramento beyond that. And the fifth phase would be deferred indefinitely. Even though the law may say that you have to go to the Transbay Terminal, you don't have to do that right away. I'm urging that you defer that and do the other phases first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Okay, next, Frank Oliveira, followed by Alan Scott.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you said, my name is Frank Oliveira. I'm with Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. I've been following this project for 4 years now. All this while, we've only asked really one thing, that the California High-Speed Rail Authority comply with all applicable laws pertaining to this project. In 2008, this project was defined by Proposition 1A. That's what we expect to be constructed in compliance with Prop 1A. The authority has failed to do that in their planning, and as a result, a court has certified that your project is not in compliance with Prop 1A. I understand that that matter is being appealed, but as things stand today, your project as designed is not in compliance with the law. I have to ask you the question, if you're not going to comply with the law, why would anybody else have to comply with the law? Because of these things, you lack public funding. There was a promise that there would be state and federal and private funding. You have no private investors at this time. That necessitates the use of the next plan. Use of AB 32 funds, greenhouse gas revenues, to fund this project to the tune of, I believe, 33% of the take in years coming forward to fund this project. Reality is, when this is portrayed as a green train, it will take decades to reach that point where any kind of environmental advantage could possibly happen. And in the meantime, we'll take a situation where the air is polluted and make it worse for decades. Once this project starts and nets a result, assuming everything tracks forward as you project, it will take years for you to acquire the greenhouse gas advantages which you're advertising to the public. The next problem is population. This project and the ridership is based on population growth. It's my understanding that the population in California will grow by tens of millions of people in the next 10 to 20, 30 years. Reality is, if there's no water, and we're rationing water today, and we're not addressing that problem, the population will not grow because people can't live without water. This project's funding is compromising the state's ability, bonding capacity, to build storage facilities, which it desperately needs and has neglected for years. The last thing I'd like to throw out is simply the road argument. I hear constantly, what are we going to do? Are we going to build more freeways, build more runways? Reality is that no benefit from this project, assuming it proceeds forward, will occur to deal with those issues for decades. Reality is we will build more freeways. We will build more roads and airport miles, runways in the meantime, because we will have to. Thank you for listening to me today. I ask you simply to comply with the law.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. Next, Alan Scott, followed by Shelley Andronigian.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. Alan Scott, Kings County, a founding member of Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. As Mr. Oliveira said, he's been doing it 4 years. I've only been doing it 3 years. But I've been noticing reading documents, not only yours, but rebuttal documents, that a number of words keep cropping up that have been troublesome to me. And in the last couple of weeks, I put together a list that I think that need to be brought out in light of what's going on. In the world of Twitter, everything has got to be 140, so I'm going to cut it down to even less, and I'm not going to use the word hashtag at the end of each of these phrases or words. So in alphabetical order, starting with backroom deal, deals, bypassing, cannot reasonably expect, confusion, distorted plans, erratically worse, environmental disaster. And again, these are words coming right out of documents that either have been written by you or by somebody else commenting on this project. Failed to, and then in parentheses, too many words to enter after to, failure to complete the comprehensive analysis, financial fitness and failures, and I went on the line to look up Monte Carlo math, or the Monte Carlo solution or process. And one thing that I noticed on 3 of the pages I was on, or 3 of the sites I was on, all by PhDs, mathematicians, saying there's only one problem with the Monte Carlo process, and that is if any of the information being put in there is wrong, the information is wrong coming out. And that's been proven over the years with the ridership and everything else. So anyway, continuing on, gross violations of due process, inadequate, irregularity or irregularities, misrepresentation, no coordination, and in the case of Kings County ever, no justification, unsupported, no service, so on and so forth. I go on, but then let me just jump to the end. The majority of us would love to see the following 4 words or phrases utilized rather than the above. Since you have been chasing a clearly political project only, the failings to date are because you have failed to use these words or phrases that without question would have been paramount not only in your vision statement, if you have one, but in everything else you do. You have a fiduciary and moral responsibility to do so, not a political responsibility. I am willing to bet utilization of these quality tenets without reservation would have eliminated 99% of the problems that you've had. And they are professionalism, ethical standards, reliability, and above all, integrity. And in closing, if you dispute what I have presented, I am happy to provide support for each one of these 35 items. And I just did the research so I can pick it up easy. Furthermore, I'd be happy to provide specific examples. However, given that I've only had 2 minutes, and I understand you've let me go, and I appreciate that time, I have passed the 2 minutes, but I will be able to avoid the one phrase that I got for 18 times on my public records request. The authority has no record regarding this request. Basically, what I'm saying is to what Mr. Oliveira said, the bottom line is we ask for transparency, we ask for responsibility, and we ask for utilization of taxpayer money properly. And we don't want to have a system that's being built that's going to hamstring this state forever and ever and ever, a generational disaster. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Shelley Andronigian, followed by Ms. Diana Lacombe.
Good morning, Chairman Richards, CEO Morales, Vice Chair Richards, Vice Chair Hartnett, members of the board and staff, along with those here today. My name is Shelley Andronigian, and I am with the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. A year ago next month, April, the CHSRA monthly board meeting was held in Fresno County. We'd like to know when you're going to have your monthly board meeting in Kings County.
Ms. Andranigian, it's your turn to speak to us. We generally do not engage in a back and forth on these, but I understand your question and your.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Diana Lacombe, followed by Kevin Dayton. Good morning, Ms. Lacombe.
Good morning, Chairman Richard, CEO Morales, and members of the board. I'm Diana Lacombe, president of APAC. And today I wanted to talk about the small businesses and their participation. You've bundled, instead of unbundling, you've bundled CP 2 and 3 and the CM 2 and 3. And we believe that one way to actually meet the 30% commitment that the authority has made is to take a serious look at fostering small businesses. And I've made some copies of the Code of Federal Regulations for all of you to review. It's 49 CFR Part 39. And what I wanted to really stress here is that this is a good way to do set-asides for small business. But the authority can't do it because it does not have a certification program for the set-asides. You cannot use the DBE, the small business for the state certification, DGS. That does not apply either. So you need your own certification process or borrow one. You know, they're different standards. That's why you can't use the others, although the DBE does qualify that standard. But what I did want to leave here with you is a copy of BART. BART has its own certification application for the set-asides, for the fostering of small business. And they call it a micro small business entity. There's nothing really micro about it as far as I'm concerned. It's 3 years, not to exceed $22.41 million for the small business. But I think that perhaps your staff could make copies of this, because I think it's really not that difficult. It's not that different from DBE, but I think it could be done quickly and in time to really impact both the CM and the construction packages. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. We'll ask the staff to look at that. Mr. Dayton, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Kevin Dayton, President and CEO of Labor Issue Solutions in Roseville. I have, over the past month, been trying to encourage people to look at the 2014 draft business plan. I've had mixed success doing it. I have to admit I haven't found anybody yet who's actually been able to go through the whole thing. As I mentioned last month, it's a difficult read. It's a tedious read. It's not well organized for the layman, and I'm not sure that the way it's formatted now, the state legislature is going to find much value in it. I will once again ask you to redraft that in a way that has a lot of charts and graphs that makes it easy for somebody to look at it and figure out what's going on, both good and bad. I'll give you a few examples of some of the things. I said a few things last month. I'll add a few more this month. For example, on page 20, it mentions $9 billion of state bond money to be spent on this project. Well, unless you're real clued in on what's going on, you're going to wonder where the other $950 million is on it, and maybe you need a footnote or something in there pointing out that the other $950 million is for connectivity type of projects. On page 3, the report mentions that it will go from San Francisco to Los Angeles Basin in under 3 hours. Somebody's going to look at that and say, well, I thought it was supposed to go from San Francisco to LA Union Station in 2 hours, 40 minutes. Once again, that needs to be clarified for the reader who's not clued in on what's going on. Some of the other things I think you might want to consider putting in, the issue of how the bond interest is going to be paid for with the vehicle weight fees. Heavy maintenance facility. This is a big issue for Fresno. It needs to be mentioned in there. What's going on with that? Who applied for it? What's the status of the applications and the choosing of where the heavy maintenance facility is going to be? there should be a chart in there talking about the bond sales that have actually occurred so far. Because most people are pretty stunned to hear, yes, there have been bonds getting sold for various aspects of the high-speed rail plan. These are just some of the issues that I see. Once again, I urge you to take a look at that and put together a resource that can really be used by the legislature and allows the public to know what's going on so you can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton. I personally think those are very constructive suggestions, and I appreciate them. So this is the time period in which we are taking public comment on the draft 2014 business plan, and so we appreciate members of the public giving us that kind of input, and I know that our CEO is taking notes right now, so that's good. Thank you. That concludes the public comment period in terms of the materials that the requests that we have. So with that, the public comment period is closed, and we'll move to the regular agenda order. The first item of business, as is always the case, is the approval of minutes from the prior board meeting. Do we have a motion on the approval of the minutes? Moved by Director Umberg, seconded by Director Frank. Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Aye.
Ms. Shank?
Yes.
Ms. Pettis Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 3 is a consent item from Finance and Audit. What do we have here, Mr. Morales? Do you know? Yeah.
Simply,
Yeah. I know the Secretary of State personally. I know she cares about public transparency, so we need to get her to have her microphones work a little better.
Mr. Chairman, last month when the Finance and Audit Committee materials were presented, one of the things that was discussed at some length and was of real concern was the aged payments report,
Yes.
and particularly the impact on small businesses. And what we want to report to the board and to the public is some very good news on that front, that we have. It's on, but okay. Oh, I really got to. Okay.
Right.
We want to report some very important progress on the aged payment process going back from the report last month. We have submitted and received, in fact, payment for $57 million of the outstanding balance, and that has actually been paid to the contractors, both primes and small businesses. So very important piece of progress. Appreciate greatly the FRA's work to approve those and to work through that process, and did just want to report back to the board and to the public that issue has, we're now current with the vast majority of our payments, and are continuing to make progress on that front.
Well, as a former small business owner, I can tell you that I think that's very welcome news. This was something that's been vexing to a lot of us, and I know, Mr. Morales, that you and Mr. Trujillo have been personally engaged in trying to resolve this issue, and I think I speak for all of us in saying that we want this body to be a good organization for people to do business with, and so this is really important. So thank you for staying on top of this, and thanks to our friends at the Federal Railroad Administration for getting the processing of the funding going so that we could make these payments. Any other comments from members of the board on this? Yes, Ms. Perez Estelano. Yeah, I think.
Eat this. Okay. I just have a quick question on the chart, Jeff. What we have is basically the accounts payable aging report, but then we also have the forecast balance pending, which means we've got funds still outstanding from FRA, and obviously the ones that are outstanding over 120 days up to a year. Are there reasons why we have payments outstanding that length of time? If we've been cleared out, and I know Russ had mentioned that we were going to clear out a whole bunch, and we did. but there's still this outstanding 2.1 that is extensive?
I'll ask Russ. Okay.
Good morning, Russ Fong, Chief Financial Officer. If you look at the report for this month, you'll notice about a $6 million balance. The majority of that are disputed invoices, so we're working with the vendors on actually seeing if those should be paid or not. The remaining about $2 to a little bit under $3 million are mostly to other state agencies. We're currently waiting for FRA to reimburse our cash from last year so we can make those payments. So it's either half of it's about state agencies, reimbursements. We're looking for the Prop 1A funds cash to be returned, approved by the FRA, and the other $3 million are disputed invoices. So once those are cleared, we'll actually be caught up on all our invoices.
Well, you've done a lot to do it. I just want to make sure that I understood where we were with this outstanding amount, but thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the presentation of the information on, for the approval, board action approval of the request for proposals for construction packages 2 and 3 for the design build contract. So, Mr. Morales, do you want to introduce this or just have Mr. Jarvis start?
Just very quick by introduction. As the board knows, we have gone through the RFQ process for construction package 2-3, in which we received 5 proposals or statements of qualification from teams. Again, world-class teams. We've now proceeded through the review of their qualifications and are prepared to move ahead and issue the RFP to those firms that we determined to be qualified. And so Mr. Jarvis will now present the specifics about what that RFP process will look like.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Richard and board members. My name is Scott Jarvis. I'm the Assistant Program Manager for the Authority. As Mr. Morales said, the purpose of this presentation is to seek board approval to proceed with the request for proposal for construction package 2-3, which is a design build contract, and to proceed in accordance with the terms contained in the term sheet. And so for some background information, the initial operating segment of the California high-speed rail system will run through the Central Valley, including the counties of Madera, Fresno, Tulare, Kings, and Kern. The California High-Speed Rail Authority awarded a contract for design and construction of Construction Package 1, the first 29 miles of the first construction segment. We refer to it as the FCS. We awarded that in June of 2013. Construction of the FCS involves design-build contracts for the final design and construction of all high-speed rail trackway civil infrastructure up to the subgrade of the ballast. A final contract will ultimately be entered into for the track work along the entire length of the FCS. So the authority has started, as was mentioned, the authority has started a 2-phase procurement process for the second of the design build contracts designated as Construction Package 2-3, which will extend in excess of 60 miles in length through the Central Valley. In response to the first phase, Request for Qualifications, RFQ, that was issued by the authority in October of 2013. And 5 teams submitted statements of qualifications, and we went through an extensive review and evaluation to establish a list of highly qualified design-build teams. And those teams are now invited to participate in the second phase, Requests for Proposal, or RFP. And the proposals submitted by the teams in response to the RFP will be thoroughly evaluated and scored to determine the team offering the best overall value. The scoring will likely be weighted 30% on technical and 70% on price. A recommendation to the board to enter into a design-build contract with a selected team is expected to take place during the winter of 2014-15. So to aid the authority in the final development of the RFP documents, a term sheet containing a summary of the major material terms and conditions of CP23, including the authority's goal of a 30% small business participation, was developed and is also presented to the board for approval. Also, to partially compensate for the cost of the preparation of the proposals submitted and to secure the benefits of their work product, the authority can pay a stipend to those proposer teams not awarded the contract. A stipend may be paid for each responsive proposal submitted to the authority by a proposer that is not awarded the contract or in case of termination of the RFP. The stipend will be based on proven cost not to exceed $2 million. So staff recommends board approval to proceed with the RFP for construction package 2-3 design build contract in accordance with the terms contained in the term sheet and to include a stipend in the amount of up to $2 million for proven costs. This is pursuant to the terms of the attached board resolution, HSRA number 1405.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Questions or comments from members of the authority board? Yeah. I'm sorry. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Scott, what I'd like to ask is the process for inviting the 5 teams to participate in the RFP process.
Yes.
That's a criteria that each of them passed. Is that correct?
Yeah, we went through a statement of qualifications period, request for qualifications, and we evaluated the offers qualifications. And yes, all 5 passed through that qualification and have been shortlisted to ask to submit proposals. That's correct.
Thank you. And not all of them have to respond. They can choose not to, but they're invited to participate in the P.
Yeah, that's correct.
It is in the interest, and as a board member, for me, to have as many good ideas come to this project in terms of building out construction package 2 and 3.
Yes.
And that's our interest, is to have as many good ideas come in the form of RFP responses.
Correct.
Now, I would understand that there would probably be some teams that say, well, if there's so many participants in the RFP pool, that might diminish our opportunities, given that there's so many in the pool. But as we are concerned, we're trying to get the best ideas and the best value for the project.
Correct.
So I just want to make clear that, in my opinion, and what I have seen, is that if you've got other competitors, that it should be a very, very good proposal that will succeed, and that for us, in our interest, to be able to have as many good ideas, and if they do agree to participate and they do receive the $2 million stipend, the high-speed rail system will benefit from those ideas as well.
That is correct, yes.
So that
and with the stipend payment, I mean, we essentially have, ownership of the ideas in the proposal after the proposals are submitted. So yeah, those are innovative ideas that the authority could possibly use for an effective and efficient delivery of the system.
Well, I appreciate that. I would like to make clear to the industry that we're very excited about the ideas that are going to be generated, and certainly invite as many to participate who've been invited. But that's the business that we're in, is to try and pick the best team for the project, and that we hope that the international community also understands what we're doing, and that this is a big project, and there's other CPs phases we're going to be going through. But that, in my opinion, I think it's good that we have 5 qualified teams that are submitting on this project. So great job.
Thank you. Mr. Umberg?
Quick question. In the past, we've had qualified teams not actually submit proposals. Do you expect all 5 to submit proposals?
I can't say that with certainty, but the expectation is yes, that all 5 will submit proposals, and we expect a very competitive process.
Yeah, I would just point out that in the construction package 1 situation, we had 5 pre-qualified teams, and there was some concern on the part of the authority members as to whether we were going to get robust competition, exactly the point that Ms. Perez-Estelano was just raising. And we saw that all 5 of those proposers bid. And I know that some in the public had a hard time understanding why we would pay a $2 million stipend to the losing bidders. But that engineer's estimate on the first construction package was that those bids would come in between $1.2 and $1.8 billion. And in fact, it came in at $985 million. So some 25 to 40% below the engineer's estimate. I personally think that knowing that there's competitive forces out there attributes to getting lower prices. And so for a total of up to $8 million, we don't have to pay the whole thing, but up to $8 million, we saved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And Mr. Jarvis made a point that I think is really worth emphasizing. In return for agreeing to pay that $2 million, the High-Speed Rail Authority then owns the intellectual property of all of the proposers. And what that means is literally if somebody had a really good idea that wasn't in the winning bid, we could inject that into the winning bidder's program. So I would say that I understand for some this is hard to comprehend, but it's a very good business decision to pay these stipends. They generate competition that leads to dramatically lower prices, and they do exactly what my colleague Ms. Perez-Estelano suggested we want to see, which is they generate good ideas that we can benefit from even if they come from a losing bidder. So I just thought it was worth taking a moment and emphasizing those aspects of that, because for the average citizen, it may not be clear why we would pay a losing bidder, but it's also my understanding that these bidders, this is a huge project. They're paying $8 and $10 million to put these bid packages together. The stipend that we're paying them does not compensate them for the entire cost of that. Mr. Morales made another point on this the other day about the benefit of the stipend to small businesses, and Jeff, that was your comment. I'd like you to just repeat that here, because I think I think you were the one who made it. Well, he's looking strange. Somebody said to me, oh, I guess it was, I'm sorry, it was in the discussion we had, Mr. Jarvis, I think you made it, or somebody did, that in fact that the benefit of the stipend tends to go to the small businesses, because the big companies take the cost of doing business, of losing bids, into consideration when they're pricing their bids. But when they go out and they ask the small businesses to participate in that bid preparation, those companies really can't afford that. So that in practical terms, what tends to happen, I'm told by staff, is that the stipend tends to flow through to the smaller businesses on the project teams. And I know Mr. Morales would have made that point had he thought of it, but somebody else on his staff did, so he gets an assist for bringing that person in.
And I will just emphasize, we've been able to verify what you just said as far as the money flowing through to local and smaller businesses with the stipends in our review of the cost.
So it's good business. Any other comments or questions? Vice Chair Richards. Here, why don't you?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following your comments, two things that I think you made clear, but just to be sure the public heard it. First of all, to get the stipend, the qualified bidders have to provide a responsive RFP. They just simply don't get it because they were one of the five. And secondly, the other thing that I think that we all know is that they have to also prove the costs. So I think the chairman's correct. The cost of responding is substantially more than the $2 million. But if they can't prove costs of $2 million, they don't simply get $2 million. So I just wanted to point those things out, and I did have a couple of questions for you, Scott, if you don't mind. The first is, it's easy to understand in the rating the 70% on cost. What's involved in the technical portion of the review?
Well, there's four main areas. One deals with the proposer's project management plan. The other deals with design considerations and their design innovation. The other is the construction aspect of their firm for managing the construction of the project and construction oversight. And the fourth area has to do with their small business program plan. So those are the four primary areas.
So as I recall, I think, Jeff, in CP1, there were perhaps one or two proposers who didn't do much on the design part. So Scott and Jeff, I assume that means that that probably impacts them negatively on the technical scoring. Is that?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we think we've really been able to, put together a very good RFP package that requires specific documents from the proposer. So we'll be able to really see the value that we get from their proposal.
I know I asked this question at CP1, but let me ask it one more time this time. So it's common on large projects like this, I am to understand that there is a limitation on retainage in this instance. It's 5% capped at $10 million, and that's consistent with the government contracting process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So unlikely that there are caps that are greater than $10 million.
Yeah. It's 5% up to $10 million.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess the question that always came to my mind on a project of this size, it's not a large retainage. So I just wanted to be certain that it's consistent with what is expected in the government contracting arena.
Yeah, and we are consistent with that. Yeah.
Yeah, in the section that talks about float, it says it belongs to either the contractor or the authority. What does that mean, and how's that determined?
Well, that has to do with the scheduling of the project and what's known as the critical path method, CPM. And with every project, construction or otherwise, there's one longest path to complete the project. But there's many paths to get to the actual completion of the project. So many of the other paths, they are not the longest paths, so those individual paths could be delayed and not delay the overall completion of the project. And so that time period where one of those non-critical paths could be delayed, that's referred to as project float. And so the way the specifications are set up is that either party, the contractor or the authority, that's a resource for the use really for the project. And so if either party delays one of those non-critical paths, they can use that float as a resource. So for example, if there is some float on a path and there is an authority caused delay, we would be able to use that as a resource and not have to provide a time extension to the contractor because it didn't delay the overall completion of the project.
Okay, so it's a float is related to time, not money, just time.
It's a time resource.
Okay, thank you. And on the limitation of contractor's liability, is this also common then that the amount of exposure is limited to 40% of the contract price?
I'm not sure. Brian, could you answer that? Okay.
Hi, good morning. This is Brian Papernick. I'm with the Nosselman firm assisting the authority. We did an analysis of many common projects, and it is common to have some limitation. It's for a lot of these firms, it's a go, no-go decision for them. So we thought when construction package 1 first came out, we did not have that in there, but it was something that we considered. And it's important to note that it's not an absolute limitation, but things like being able to complete the contract is not within that limitation, and there are other exceptions outside of that limitation. So we felt that it was appropriate.
So this might be a limitation that's in addition to any bonding requirements that a contractor has.
That's right, or it's on top of insurance. If there's insurance, it would be on top of that. If it's fraud, that doesn't include it. If there's indemnities, that's outside of it, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Other questions? Ms. Shank.
Well, is this on now? Good. I'll eat what's left over. Again, just for the record and so that the public knows, each of us was given the opportunity to meet with staff, either in person or telephonically, to take a real deep dive on this, and I think most of us took advantage of that. There were a number of questions, many of which were covered already, the stipend, et cetera. I just want to say that if my questions were fully answered, but in the interest of the record if, Scott, you would talk about the substantial completion liquidated damages issue, the issue that in past years ago would rear its ugly head where we would get lower bids, but quality of material and other kinds of things were lowballed, and then we got requests for change orders, which sort of were automatically signed off on. So the kinds of things that we discussed, and as I say, I'm now confident that we've done the best we can on those kinds of issues, but if you would just expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, the contract is clear on any type of non-conforming work that at any time prior to substantial completion, even if there may have been approval of the work at the time through the independent checking engineer and independent site engineer, could be a couple of years later, if there's a determination that the work is not conforming and doesn't meet the requirements of the contract, the authority would require the contractor to repair that work and to restore it at its own cost. In addition, there is a 2-year warranty on workmanship and materials after substantial completion of the project. So the authority is protected in that manner as well. And then as far as change orders, we have a very rigorous process in place. We have formed a contract change order committee, and that most changes of any significance go through this committee of authority management, and there is approval of the change order concept before it actually moves forward towards an approved change order. So that kind of summarizes some of the protections in place. In addition, there's a 50% performance bond on the contract and 100% payment bond, in addition to the retainage that's been discussed. So there's many contract protections in place to ensure that the quality of the work and materials meets the contract requirements. As far as liquidated damages, if the contractor does not complete the work within the number of specified contract working days, the contractor will be assessed liquidated damages, which essentially pays for the authority's costs and overhead costs of administering the contract.
I was pleased to learn that we've learned from the long ago mistakes of other agencies, so thank you.
Mr. Frank.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the stipend issue, I must confess, in reviewing the materials for this item, that is the one provision that jumped out and caught my attention. And last week when I had my opportunity to be briefed by the staff, I had some rather direct questions for the staff. And I also want to just indicate that I was satisfied with their remarks, and I very much appreciate your setting the context and providing the background, Mr. Chairman. I guess the only question I had is with respect to those stipends, are they the award of those stipends to any unsuccessful bidders, are those at the discretion of the authority as delegated to the staff, or are those automatic with respect to any and all?
No, they're not automatic. I mean, it does have to be an acceptable proposal that is submitted. In addition, we do audit the costs to verify that they're proven costs and that the costs are at least $2 million. But what has been discussed is that the actual costs are substantially in excess of $2 million to prepare these proposals. We've also done research to look at other public agencies and their stipend amount, and many of the stipend amounts for large design build contracts are far in excess of the $2 million that we're paying.
All right. With all those explanations, I'm at this point comfortable with those provisions. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Mr. Morales, you had a point you wanted to make?
I just want to get back to a question Mr. Umberg raised, and knowing that our words get parsed very carefully here about our expectations as far as how many bids will ultimately be submitted. We have, last time we did have 5 qualified firms who went through the entire process and submitted proposals in the end. We've had 5 teams submit. There is some overlap from the teams of CP1 and now CP23. We also have some new players. I just want to be very careful to say there's no guarantee that all 5 will go through the entire process, and I didn't want anyone to walk away with that impression. the combination of a number of things we do, including the stipends, are designed to try to keep people in the process. And we work through the process to try to address any issues that come up with bidders. But they do make business decisions, so there is a chance that not all 5 will submit. But at this point, all 5 have gone to the effort of submitting their qualifications, indicating their interest, and we are hopeful that we'll keep all 5 throughout the whole process.
Thank you. That's an important
Dan?
clarification. Hold on one second. I'm sorry, Mr. Hartnett was next. I'll come back to you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Here. This is just going to be easier.
Also, I think it's important to remember that we've been through this before. We did do the really extensive analysis when we did our first construction package, and I think it was instructive to us at that time in terms of the extensive analysis and comment that we had on the first package, and it helped inform us as we analyzed this second / third package. And there are some changes to this package as a result of our experience in the first. I think they're to the better. But in addition to having the opportunity for recent briefings, I just want people to really understand that there have been hours and hours spent on these terms and conditions cumulatively leading up to today, including the analysis of the first package.
Ms. Perez-Estalon.
Yes, I apologize, Scott. I forgot to ask this before. I'm not an engineer. I'm a planner and real estate person, so I don't know what ballast is, and I looked it up, and it is what I think it is, but I don't understand the terms under which you used it in this statement. So in the future, if you could try and help those of us who don't live and breathe engineering terminology to at least explain what those things are,
Sure.
So that we can follow and understand what you're trying to communicate.
Okay.
And by the way, what is
It's just simply the crushed rock, the aggregate that's placed on top of the rail bed itself. And so this is essentially for these construction packages is that we're constructing the embankment, the bridges, the tunnels, everything up to the track work itself and associated materials that go with the track work, such as the ballast. So
it's a pile of rocks.
Got it. Yeah. That's what I thought it was. Okay. Thanks.
And I just want to point out that at last month's meeting, Ms. Rivera, our auditor, said, I'm not an engineer and I don't plan to become an engineer. And I went up to her afterwards and asked her if that's what passed for auditor humor, and she assured me it did. So I just want to recognize that the flashback there when you said that.
She kills at the auditor parties.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And Mr. Chairman, my colleague can take some comfort from the fact I had exactly the same question. That was my first question to staff last week when I had my briefing, what the definition of that term was in this context.
And just, you've been around too long now. And that's an example, we make a major point of this being a design-build procurement, and part of the goal of that is to get innovative, creative ideas. At the same time, we have to set certain standards and establish design standards so that they all know what they're bidding against. And ballast is an example of that, where we made a system-wide decision to go with a ballasted track, and there are lots of reasons for doing that. Everything from noise attenuation to ease of maintenance to dealing with issues like subsidence. That's an explicit mechanism for dealing with that. So that's why that term is in there, and because that's guidance given to all of the bidders so that they know where their room for creativity is and where it isn't.
And just on that point, too, right? Or it's the antonym for unballasted, which some people would accuse us of being as a board sometimes. But no, the point I was, yeah, right. Just two last points on this. First is just to pick up on what Mr. Morales said. One of my concerns had been that when we deal with design build, we know that design build can bring us tremendous benefits in terms of getting a project delivered on time and within budget. because it shifts risks to the developer, to the contractor, to complete the design and then build to that design, which minimizes their opportunity to come in with change orders if they're the ones making the design. At the same time, we want to make sure that in shifting that responsibility for design completion to them, that we're still meeting standards that the public wants and expects in terms of the product quality that we're going to be given here. And so that was the nature of some of my questions for staff, and I was satisfied that there's very extensive design standards so that we're not simply just tossing this to the prospective contractor. They have to build something that meets design criteria. How they do that and what innovations they bring to meeting those design standards is up to them, and that gives them the opportunity for competitive advantage. But we don't want a substandard product at the end of the day, and that's why an extensive design standards piece is part of this. And I would just, finally, my last comment on this is that, again, several of the board members have talked about the desire to have robust competition here and to encourage members of the bidding community to vigorously compete for this for this very large but also very significant project. One of the questions that I had asked staff on several occasions as we went through the litany of contract provisions was, are these customary and standard in the construction industry, in the bidding industry? And of course, with a project like this, there will be areas where we have to do things that are new, that have not been seen before. But again, I took some comfort from the fact that in virtually every case, the answers were that these were standard types of provisions, that they were customary, they were within the range of expectations. Even if there was some slight variance, they were within the range of expectations of the bidding community. So I think with the stipend, with the fact that we're using customary provisions, with the fact that, as Vice Chair Hartnett pointed out, that we've been able to look at the experience from the first construction package, I just want to say that I certainly think that the staff has done a very professional job in putting this together. I mean, it's a very large package, and we're hopeful that it leads to the kind of robust competition that we've seen in the past. Other comments, questions, concerns from members of the board? This is an action item, right, Mr. Flins? All right, I'll entertain a motion to move forward with this RFP. Okay, it was moved, I saw first by Ms. Shank, and then seconded by Vice Chair Richards. Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Ms. Shank?
Yes.
Ms. Perez Estolano?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Thank you, and thank you to all the staff members who worked on this. I know that this was an enormous effort, so we appreciate that. Next item is an update on the EIR-EIS process for the Fresno to Bakersfield alignment. Diana Gomez, and I don't know if Mark McLaughlin's he's going to give an assist.
Yeah, he's going to join me.
Not that
Team effort.
Not that anybody needs to assist you, Ms. Gomez.
It's always helpful.
Good morning.
Well, good morning. Good morning, Chairman and board members. This item is an informational item to update the board on staff actions regarding the final EIR-EIS since we last presented in November, and then also to detail the next steps in the process. So as you recall, last November 2013 meeting, the board concurred with the staff recommended preferred alternatives to be included in the final environmental document for Fresno to Bakersfield. Since November, we have continued to engage with stakeholders, including elected officials, state agencies, local cities, local communities, many of the irrigation districts, impacted property owners, to discuss the document, the footprint, the right-of-way process, and also to discuss minimization and mitigation impacts. Since November, major milestones that were completed were the concurrence from the regulatory agencies on the staff preferred alternatives as the LEPA. Mark McGlon, our Director of Environmental Services, will discuss the technical reports that have been completed and then the next steps.
Mr. McLaughlin. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana and Chairman and board members. I'll give a very brief focus on the next steps for the Fresno-Bakersfield section. And environmental, we're very focused on environmental approvals and permitting to allow, on the heels of the CP23, to allow procurement and construction to proceed. And that's our main goals, is to get those approvals through the permitting agencies and the environmental documents to make sure that we can meet our schedules and commence construction. So within the next 2 months, I'll drill down a little bit in some detail. Again, following up on Diana's, on your direction in November, we submitted our what we call Checkpoint C document to the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for our preferred alternative. We submitted that right after the board decision to submit that, and then right before the holiday, we had concurrence from the Corps of Engineers and the EPA that the preferred alternative we submitted was the LEDPA. And that alternative was basically the BNSF alternative, including...
You should define that term, Mark.
LEDPA is the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative.
Right. And we didn't make up that term. That's a term
That's
that
correct.
exists in statute.
That's
I'd
correct.
like that to be clear.
But it's one of our many acronyms.
Right.
That's correct. So, just to go backwards on that, that is a combination of the BNSF alternative, the Corcoran bypass, Allensworth bypass, and the basic Bakersfield hybrid alternative, those combinations of that preferred alternative. And then that preferred alternative goes from Fresno to 7th Standard Road. And so that's where we will be permitting, which includes CP23 and then portions of the future 4. So with that concurrence, we also submitted our permit application for the 404 to the Corps of Engineers in January, and we've yet to receive any information back on that. So we're following that very closely to meet the procurement strategy, along with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, State Water Board, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So with that, we're now in the process of completing the final EIR, EIS, and we expect to release this document for public review in April. And then we're also...
Mark, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
What's a Form 404?
404 is it's a Clean Water Act permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It basically comes from Clean Water Act. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has delegated authority over that Clean Water Act, and then the State Water Board has also the state delegation of that.
It's Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, and it's really the major permit for any imposition of waterways of the United
Dredge
States.
and fill. It's really to fill a jurisdictional feature by the Corps, a wetland, a river, or vernal pools, for instance, which we see a lot in the Central Valley.
Thank you.
So now, again, we're in the final throes to complete the EIR, EIS of importance. Not only it's important for CP1, which 1A, 1B, CP1C is part of CP1. So we're racing to complete that. And on CP1, our resource agencies are imminent. We expect those before the end of this month. So we're moving forward with that progress for CP1 and the existing construction contract. So as we move forward on completing the document, we're looking at requesting a two-day board meeting at the end of April for the project, similar to what we did for Merced Fresno. First day would be public comment. The second day would be deliberations by you, the board, on how to proceed. A couple timelines in meeting our schedule. Once we provide the final EIR, EIS to the FRA, there will be a public review for 30 days, and we're targeting the first week or so of April for that. The FRA ROD, or Record of Decision, is post your deliberations in April, which is roughly the middle of May. We're targeting right now. And then, again, on the people, if you may have questions on the STB decision, that's post FRA ROD. They have up to 60 days to issue their Record of Decision regarding construction. We've been working with the FRA and STB to try and close that gap, to work together with them to have commensurate RODs within a short period of time. So with that, that's a very brief update for us.
Just a clarification for some members, Mr. McLaughlin mentioned that the adoption of the Record of Decision, Notice of Decision under the EIS, EIR process is important also for construction package 1. And that's because in construction package 1, it really spans a 29-mile length, but only 25 miles of that is in the portion of the Merced to Fresno EIR, EIS that was previously cleared. So the contractor will not be given the authority to move, cannot be legally given the authority to move on the last 5 miles of that unless and until the next EIR, EIS, which laps over that 5-mile portion, gets adopted by this board. So that, I think I've stated that accurately, Mr. Morales. Mr. Frank, did you have a question?
Well, really, more of a comment. You mentioned that a public hearing in Fresno has been scheduled to take comment on the EIR at the end of April. If possible, if we haven't tied down the particular time and schedule, I would recommend that we try and schedule that hearing to commence in the early afternoon to allow board members and staff to travel to Fresno, but more importantly, to extend the hearing into the evening hours to allow those interested members of the public who are working or have other obligations in the day, during the day to participate and to maximize the opportunities for public comment participation.
Agreed.
I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you. We'll follow up on that. And I know Ms. Andronigi in her public comments asked where those meetings will be held, and it is going to be held in Fresno, which should be convenient to people along the alignment there. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Gomez, for that update. Last item we have is for Mr. Morales, an update on the draft 2014 business plan.
All right, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to update the board, but also remind the public that we are still in the public comment period on the draft plan. As of this morning, we had received 110 comments with Mr. Dayton's comments. We're up to 111 now. We are in the process of reviewing those, reminding people again they have several different ways they can submit comments through the website, which is the way the majority of comments have been submitted, also through the mail and phone, and by speaking here at the board meeting. So we are moving forward with that, again, receiving a good number of comments, some very specific, some suitable for discussion in public, some not, but we're moving ahead.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. We'll just have two other items before we close.
I just have a quick question, Dan.
Yes.
I apologize.
No.
Jeff, are we going to receive copies of those comments at the end of that 60-day period? We'll receive them all?
Yes. What we will have available for the board and the public is a full cataloging of the comments sorted. What we do is, among other things, try to group them together so that if we have 15 comments all in the same area, we note that, and so that you will also get a sense of where the preponderance of issues were, or comments or questions.
I just want to make sure that everybody knew that those comments would be made public,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
as well as to the board and openly. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an important clarification. Thank you for that. Ms. Schenk.
But I just want to underscore the comment that was made here earlier, and that is sort of a fundamental approach to it, to make sure that it is understandable, that it is reader-friendly to the public especially, and that we, as much as possible, not use acronyms, define terms, and have it sorted and organized in a way that there is as much smooth flow to the reader as possible.
A-okay. No, that's... Before we go, Mr. Falens, you had a new member of your staff that perhaps you could just indicate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. We do have a new assistant chief counsel.
He's right there.
Jim Andrew just recently joined us today. This is his first day. He was at the Attorney General's office for a number of years, as well as private practice. So very pleased to have Jim on board as assistant chief counsel. Especially me, I'm very pleased.
Well, I just Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments on this. First of all, I am not a veteran. I did not serve in uniform, but many of the members of this board did, and so there's generally been a running battle as to which service has been most prominent. And we have Mr. Rossi, Mr. Henning, who were in the Marine Corps. We have Mr. Hartnett, who was in the United States Navy. Mr. Umberg is still on active reserve in the United States Army. And Mr. Richards was a veteran of the Army, although it was the helicopter wing, so almost sort of airborne. Mr. Andrew, I understand, was a surface warfare officer in the United States Navy. Now, that background will probably be well suited for us as we go forward. But I just want to say that to the chagrin of several of our board members, it looks like we've got another Navy guy here in the organization. So I just thought I'd point that out. Yeah, Mr. Frank.
I can't take any credit for recruiting or hiring Mr. Andrew to the Attorney General's office. He was hired after I left, but in a relatively short period of time, he really developed a stellar reputation as one of the strongest members of the land law section, in which he worked with distinction for a number of years. So while I'm sure we at the authority are delighted to get him as our Assistant Chief Counsel, it is a significant loss to the Attorney General's office, and my guess is that Kamala Harris and her management team somewhere are in mourning today. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, welcome, Jim.
I do want to say also, Jim, we've kind of come across each other's paths in previous lives, and I can't be more thrilled with the experience you have, but also the approach that you take, the work that you do. And so when we heard about this, we were all doing a high five, saying that we scored. So thanks so much for joining the team.
And even though it's Mr. Falenza's birthday today, that's his present to us. Anyway, welcome, Jim. Thank you. So just before we close, I'm just going to exercise Chair's prerogative to make a comment or two. This is, as everybody knows, a controversial and challenging project, and like any other major infrastructure project, there are moments of triumph and moments of setback. But at today's board meeting, what you saw is an organization that's moving forward with the next construction package to complete the development of the spine of high-speed rail in the Central Valley. You see that we are continuing to attract top talent for our own staff. The organization under Mr. Morales' leadership becomes ever stronger, and I think gives us confidence in the ability of this organization to deliver these projects. And contrary to what people might see or read, the high-speed rail program is moving forward in this state. We do have these challenges, and there was some public comment this morning about whether or not we're complying with the law and the will of the voters and so forth. And I can tell you, sitting here both as chair but also working with these men and women as colleagues, that everything that we have done since I've been on this body and everything that we do is to further the purposes of the Bond Act and the law and the will of the voters to build a complete modern high-speed rail system. And in fact, I challenge anybody to point to a single decision that we've made that is contrary to the purposes of Proposition 1A or what we're trying to build. What we've determined is that we need to do this in phases as a practical matter. That approach certainly received the affirmation of the federal auditors at the Government Accountability Office, who came in and looked at that and said that that was the best way to deal with the risks and uncertainties of funding. And I have to also say that, I take note of the fact that sometimes people who criticize this project and say that somehow we're not following the law would propose solutions. I'm thinking of counsel for one of our adversaries, who would say, well, build it up the I-5 or do other things that, in fact, on their face violate the law and the intent of the law. So I feel very comfortable that while this board, I think, is open to any type of public criticism, suggestions, and so forth, that what we're doing is we're moving forward in a deliberative process and a deliberative way to actually build this project. And finally, there was one comment made about the desire of the public that this process be transparent. And that's certainly an appropriate comment. We're talking about building a project that's going to cost billions of dollars of either taxpayer money, bondholder money, or private sector money that we would be the stewards for. And of course, that process needs to be open and transparent. I think if you stand back and look at what's occurred over the last several years, our process of developing a business plan, developing a funding plan, these were all the subject of extensive open public hearings, public discussions, and debate. I think that there cannot really be any reasonable person who is not aware of the decisions that we made or the issues that we presented to the California legislature, which had its own extensive and detailed look at this project and the direction that we were taking. And many of the questions, whether they've been before the court or before the public, were in fact addressed by the legislature in their processes. So transparency is absolutely essential. Last month, we made the decision based on a request from the Assembly Transportation Committee Chair that our Finance and Audit Committee meetings be open for public observation, and we've done that. Last month, we had the presentation by our staff of the system of reports and metrics that this organization is going to use as we go forward. I challenge any other public agency to show that they have a more extensive system of that type of reporting information, and if they do, we'll match it. So I just want to sit here and say that it's my sense, and I believe that I speak for my colleagues on this, that what we are doing is very much faithful to what the public asked us to do, and that, frankly, we live in a time and place where there's going to be opposition, and I understand that opposition, and it's rational. If this project were coming through my backyard, I might have objections to it as well. But I think that what we're trying to do here is something that is for the greater good, and I know there's a lot of confidence on the part of this board that we're proceeding in a fashion that's consistent with the public interest. So I apologize for taking a moment. That's what happens when we finish early on the agenda. But I do think that a lot of these comments have started to take some hold in the public, and I just think it's incumbent on us to stand up and say, no, what we're doing is exactly what the public asked us to do when they enacted Proposition 1A. And under the leadership of a governor who I think has a lot of vision and a lot of guts, we are going to deliver this project for the people of California. So thank you for indulging me on that. And with that, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.